The sun poured through the large windows of my childhood home, casting a warm glow over the room adorned with flowers and decorations, symbols of love and celebration. Every corner seemed to buzz with excitement, a contrast to the whirlwind of emotions swirling within me. I stood in front of the mirror, dressed in delicate lace and satin, the fabric hugging me in all the right places, a vision of what every bride dreams of on her wedding day. Yet, beneath the surface, joy battled with anxiety, a tumultuous storm clouding my mind. I gazed at my reflection, the veil cascading down my back, and felt a pang of doubt. This day was supposed to be perfect, the culmination of months of planning and anticipation. Yet, as I turned away from the mirror, my thoughts drifted to Zaria, my younger sister. Our relationship had always been complicated, a tapestry woven with threads of envy and rivalry. I wondered if today might mark a turning point, a chance for us to mend the rift that had grown between us over the years. I inhaled deeply, the scent of fresh flowers mingling with the faint aroma of the wedding cake cooling in the kitchen. My heart raced as I imagined the moment I would walk down the aisle, my eyes locked on Jordan, the man who had captured my heart. Yet, the thought of Zaria's presence loomed large in my mind. Would she be supportive, or would the envy that had plagued her for years rear its ugly head once more? As I moved through the house, I caught glimpses of my family buzzing around, their faces lit with excitement. My mother adjusted the floral arrangements, while my father checked his watch, eager for the ceremony to commence. Laughter echoed through the hall, a melodic backdrop to my apprehensions. I wanted to be swept away by the happiness surrounding me, but the weight of my sister's potential jealousy pulled me back. I remembered the countless times Zaria had tried to outshine me, whether it was at school events or family gatherings. She had always been the little shadow, wanting to wear what I wore, to be seen as I was seen. It was a never-ending cycle of competition, and although I loved her, I couldn't shake the feeling that today would be another round in our ongoing battle. The sound of the doorbell jolted me from my thoughts. Guests were arriving. I felt a flutter of nerves in my stomach, a mix of excitement and dread. I forced myself to smile, reminding myself that today was about love and union, not rivalry. Yet, as I stepped out of my room, I couldn't help but scan the crowd for Zaria, my heart pounding with uncertainty. When I finally spotted her, a knot tightened in my chest. She was radiant, the laughter spilling from her lips infectious. But there was something unsettling in the way she moved through the crowd, her eyes glinting with an energy I couldn't quite place. I shook my head, dismissing the feeling as pre-wedding jitters. As the minutes ticked by, I was swept up in the whirlwind of preparations. The sound of soft music filled the air, and I could hear the rustle of fabric as my bridesmaids flitted around, helping me with the final touches. I felt a moment of calm wash over me, the excitement of the day taking precedence over my fears. But just as I thought I could breathe, a chilling thought crept in. Would Zaria find a way to steal my moment? The church came into view as we drove down the familiar streets, the towering spires reaching towards the sky like a promise of hope. My heart raced, anticipation coursing through my veins. I could almost hear the soft whispers of well wishes from family and friends, the words floating like petals in the breeze. This was it, my day, the beginning of a new chapter. But as I stepped into the church, the air thick with floral scents and hushed murmurs, I froze. My breath caught in my throat as I took in the sight before me. Zaria stood at the front, radiant and glowing, a vision in my wedding dress. A wave of confusion and betrayal crashed over me, drowning out the joy that had filled my heart just moments before. I stood there, paralyzed, as the reality of the moment sank in. This was not how my day was supposed to unfold. Standing there, frozen in disbelief, I felt as though time had halted in that moment. Zaria's laughter danced through the air, her joy an unbearable contrast to the turmoil raging within me. There she was, my younger sister, adorned in the very dress that had been the centerpiece of my dreams for years, a dress I had envisioned myself wearing as I walked toward Jordan, the man I loved. Instead, I stood paralyzed, a spectator to a scene that should have been mine. I could hear the distant murmur of our family and friends, their whispers punctuating the thick tension that hung heavy in the air. As the ceremony began, I fought back the tears that threatened to spill down my cheeks, a bitter taste of betrayal filling my mouth. Zaria took her place at the altar, beaming with an innocence that cut deeper than any knife. Did she not understand the weight of her actions? The intricate lace that hugged her figure was not merely fabric. It was a symbol of my journey, my love, and my commitment. Yet there she was, glowing, blissfully unaware of the devastation she had wrought. Every heartbeat echoed in my ears as I struggled to contain the swell of emotions inside me. Anger, confusion, and a profound sense of loss all battled for dominance. I could feel the eyes of our family on me, their gazes filled with sympathy and confusion. What were they thinking? Did they realize the depth of Zaria's betrayal? I could not help but wonder if they perceived the silent storm brewing within me. The officiant's voice droned on, words blurring together as I fought to focus. The radiant glow of Zaria's smile seemed to mock me, each flash of her happiness a reminder of what I had lost. The ceremony continued, an excruciating parade of moments that felt both surreal and painfully real. My heart raced as I attempted to ground myself, to breathe through the suffocating realization that my sister had not only stolen my dress, but had also usurped my day. I wanted to scream, to shout, to shake her into understanding the gravity of her actions. But as I stood there, the bride in a wedding gown that was now a mere backdrop to my sister's moment, I felt an overwhelming urge to retreat, to hide from the spotlight that had shifted so drastically away from me. Finally, the ceremony came to an end, but the weight of my emotions was far from lifted. My heart raced with a mix of anticipation and dread as I approached Zaria during the reception. The atmosphere was thick with discomfort, the air heavy with unspoken words and unacknowledged tension. As I navigated through the crowd, each step felt like a mile, the distance between us an insurmountable chasm of hurt and betrayal. I could see her laughing, chatting animatedly with guests, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just a few feet away. My hands were clammy, my chest tight as I rehearsed the words I wanted to say. I needed her to understand how deeply she had hurt me, how she had stolen not just a dress, but a moment that was meant to be filled with joy and love. My fingers curled into fists at my sides, the urge to confront her battling with the instinct to retreat into the shadows. As I finally reached her, the world around me faded, and all that existed was the two of us. The cacophony of laughter and chatter dissolved into silence, and it was just Zaria and me, standing on the precipice of a confrontation that had been years in the making. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my emotions heavy in my chest, ready to spill over. This moment, so fraught with tension, would change everything. I could no longer allow the jealousy and rivalry that had characterized our relationship to dictate who we were. It was time to confront the betrayal, to lay bare the wounds that had festered for far too long. With every pulse of my heart, I knew I had to speak, to finally articulate the pain that had been building within me. The reception buzzed around us, oblivious to the storm brewing in our hearts, but I was ready. I stepped forward, knowing that the outcome would redefine everything between us. The reception hall buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, but for me, it felt like a suffocating bubble of chaos. I stood at the side, watching Zaria, my sister, basking in the limelight of my wedding day while wearing my wedding dress. It was surreal, like a nightmarish twist in a movie where the protagonist discovers her life has been hijacked. The white satin fabric shimmered under the ornate chandeliers, the lace adorned with delicate beadwork framing her smile, yet all I felt was a rising tide of anger and betrayal. As Zaria twirled and laughed, surrounded by family and friends, I could hardly comprehend the scene unfolding before my eyes. The dress was not just a garment. It was a symbol of my dreams, my journey towards this day, and now it was being paraded around as if it belonged to her. The lightness of the evening felt like an insult to my heart, which was heavy with sorrow and rage. Each giggle and every sparkle in her I felt like a dagger, twisting deeper with every moment that passed. My fingers curled into fists at my sides as I fought the impulse to scream, to confront her, yet a part of me hesitated, unsure of how to address the betrayal without causing a scene. The music played on, a melodic backdrop to the drama that was unfolding within me. I watched as she danced, her laughter ringing out like a mocking echo of my happiness. I could see the guests fawning over her, complimenting her beauty, oblivious to the emotional turmoil roiling just beneath the surface. It was as if my entire life had been put on display, and I was merely a ghost at my own wedding, trapped in a whirlwind of emotions that threatened to consume me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but the air felt thick with resentment. Memories of our childhood flooded my mind. Zaria always wanting what I had, always wanting to overshadow me. I had hoped that as we grew older, the rivalry would fade, that we could coexist as sisters rather than competitors. But here we were, and she had crossed a line I didn't think possible. The dress was supposed to be a representation of love, of commitment, and here it was, tarnished by envy and betrayal. Time dragged on, the moments blending into a haze of confusion. I could hear the laughter of our guests, the clinking of glasses, but it all felt distant, like I was watching a play instead of living it. I felt the weight of their eyes, glancing in my direction, perhaps sensing the tension brewing beneath the surface. My stomach churned, and I fought back the urge to flee. I didn't want to be the center of attention for the wrong reasons, yet my heart screamed for justice. Finally, I could no longer contain the anger that bubbled within me. I knew I had to confront Zaria, to lay bare the hurt she had caused me, to demand an explanation. As I made my way through the crowd, my heart raced, each step closer to her feeling like a leap into the unknown. The guests parted, their smiles fading as they sensed the impending storm. I reached her side, and the world around me faded into a blur. With every ounce of courage I could muster, I called out to her, my voice steady yet filled with an undercurrent of pain. The laughter ceased, and a hush fell over the crowd as they turned their attention to us. Zaria's smile faltered as she met my gaze, confusion momentarily flashing across her face. For a split second, I saw a flicker of realization in her eyes, a hint that she understood the gravity of what she had done. But before I could unleash the floodgates of my emotions, she opened her mouth to defend herself, to justify her actions in front of our bewildered guests. The atmosphere crackled with tension as her words spilled out, each one feeling like a dismissal of my pain. She claimed she wanted to be a part of my special day, that wearing the dress was her way of celebrating with me. But with each word, my disbelief grew. How could she not see the depth of her betrayal? How could she think that stealing my day, my moment, would ever be seen as a gesture of love? I felt the heat rising to my cheeks, a mixture of embarrassment and fury. The guests watched in rapt attention, their faces a mix of shock and intrigue, and I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. I took a step closer, the distance between us shrinking as I prepared to unleash years of pent-up emotions. It was no longer just about the dress. It was about the years of rivalry, the jealousy that had seeped into our relationship, and the bitter truth that had been left unspoken for far too long. The room was silent, all eyes on us, the air thick with anticipation. I had to make them understand, had to make her understand, that this wasn't just a stolen dress. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than she could ever realize. The music from the reception hall faded into a dull hum as I led Zaria away from the cluster of guests. My heart raced, a mixture of anger and confusion swirling within me. I had to confront her, to unravel the mess that our lives had become. But I was acutely aware of the eyes that followed us, the whispers that drifted through the air like smoke. I could feel the weight of their judgment, but in this moment, it was just Zaria and me. We stepped into a small alcove, away from the prying eyes and the chaos of the wedding festivities. The soft glow of fairy lights twinkled around us, creating a strangely intimate atmosphere that contrasted sharply with the turmoil inside me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing thoughts. The dress, my dress, was a symbol of everything I had dreamed of, and seeing Zaria in it felt like watching my dreams shatter in front of me. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since I entered the church. Zaria's eyes were wide, glistening with unshed tears, and I could see the fear and uncertainty etched on her face. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. We were sisters, after all, bound by blood and a shared history, but that bond felt tenuous right now. Why would you do this? I asked myself, the question echoing in my mind as I searched for the words to express my hurt. Instead of waiting for an answer, I poured out my feelings, the hurt bubbling to the surface. I explained to her how much the dress meant to me, how it represented not just my wedding day, but years of anticipation and joy. I spoke of the countless hours I had spent planning every detail, envisioning myself walking down the aisle, surrounded by family and friends. I wanted her to understand the weight of her actions, to see the ripple effect they had caused. As I spoke, I noticed a shift in her posture. Zaria's shoulders slumped, the defiance that had marked her earlier demeanor starting to fade. She looked away, lost in thought, and I seized the moment. I urged her to share her feelings, to tear down the walls that had been built between us over the years. To my surprise, Zaria began to speak, her voice trembling as she opened up about her insecurities. She told me how she had always felt overshadowed by me, how my accomplishments seemed to loom over her like a dark cloud. I listened, my anger mingling with a growing sense of empathy. Zaria spoke of feeling inadequate, of being the younger sister who could never quite measure up. I realized that her wearing my dress was not just an act of envy. It was a desperate attempt to claim a moment for herself, to step into a role that she felt she could never fill. As her words hung in the air, the tension between us shifted. What had started as a confrontation morphed into a fragile exchange of vulnerabilities. I could feel my heart softening, the edges of my resentment beginning to blur. I wanted to reach out and comfort her, to assure her that she was enough. But the betrayal still stung, and I hesitated, unsure of how to bridge the gap that had widened between us. The night carried on around us, laughter and music filtering through the walls, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil we were navigating. I could hear the faint sound of glasses clinking and the chatter of guests, oblivious to the storm brewing just a few feet away. It felt surreal, as if we were trapped in a bubble of our own making, the world outside continuing without us. Yet, despite our revelations, the underlying current of unresolved tension remained. I felt torn, caught between the sisterly love I had for her and the anger that still simmered beneath the surface. It was clear that we had made progress, but the wounds of betrayal were not easily healed. I wanted to forgive her, to embrace her and move past this dividing moment, but the scars of our rivalry, the years of envy and competition, loomed large in my mind. As we stood there, surrounded by the echoes of our past, I knew that this conversation was just the beginning of a long journey toward understanding. The night continued, but I felt a heaviness in my heart, a mix of hope and uncertainty. Would we be able to navigate the complexities of our relationship, or was this moment merely a fleeting glimpse of what could be? The future felt uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I was willing to explore the possibility of reconciliation. As the clinking of glasses and distant laughter filled the air, I felt like a ghost haunting my own wedding reception. The room was a blur of colors and faces, but all I could focus on was the radiant figure across the room. Zaria, my sister, wearing my wedding dress. The sight struck me like a blow to the gut, a reminder of the painful history that defined our relationship. My heart raced, a cacophony of anger, betrayal, and unrelenting sadness echoing in my mind. I was trapped in a whirlwind of emotions, each one more tumultuous than the last. I glanced around the room, trying to ground myself in the present. Guests swirled like leaves in an autumn breeze, their laughter ringing out like a mocking chorus. I should have been the center of attention, the bride basking in love and joy. Yet here I stood, overshadowed by my sister's audacity. I felt invisible, an outsider looking in on my own celebration. The weight of unresolved tension hung in the air, thick and suffocating, urging me to confront the very person who had betrayed me. My thoughts spiraled back to our childhood, memories of Zaria's relentless jealousy flooding my mind. I could almost see her, a younger version of herself, sneaking into my room to borrow my clothes, or the way she would light up when our parents praised her for the smallest achievements, as if she thrived on my overshadowed moments. Jealousy had woven itself into the fabric of our lives, a thread that had pulled us apart rather than binding us together. It was a haunting realization that this day, which should have marked a new beginning, was merely a continuation of our rivalry. As I watched Zaria twirl and laugh, the dress cascading around her in a cloud of white satin, I felt something shift within me, a flicker of understanding mingled with my anger. Perhaps this wasn't just about the dress. Perhaps it was about the years of competition and resentment that had built up like a dam waiting to burst. Could I really confront her? Could we break this cycle of jealousy and pain? Determined to find clarity, I made my way through the throngs of guests, my heart pounding as I approached her. Each step felt heavy, laden with the weight of our shared history. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation that had been brewing since childhood. I could see it in her eyes, a glimmer of innocence and happiness, unaware of the storm I was about to unleash. With every inch closer, the memories of our childhood flashed before me. Fights over toys, whispered secrets turned to bitter betrayals. But this moment was different. This was about more than just a dress. It was about years of hurt, longing, and the desperate desire for acceptance. I wanted nothing more than to scream at her, to unleash the fury that had been simmering for far too long. And yet, beneath that anger lay a profound sadness, a longing for the sisterly bond that had crumbled beneath the weight of jealousy. As I finally stood before her, the tension palpable between us, I felt the urge to reach out, to embrace the sister I once knew. But the words caught in my throat, battling against the anger and hurt that threatened to eclipse everything. I realized that while I longed for reconciliation, I was also terrified of it. Would a simple apology suffice? Could we truly bridge the chasm that had grown between us? In that moment of vulnerability, I saw Zaria's smile falter, a flicker of realization dawning in her eyes. She looked at me with a mixture of confusion and trepidation, as if she too sensed the gravity of our situation. The room around us faded into the background, the laughter and chatter becoming a distant hum as we stood, two sisters caught in a web of past grievances and unspoken words. As the night wore on, I realized that our journey towards reconciliation would not be an easy one. Yet standing there, I felt an inkling of hope. The road ahead might be rocky, filled with moments of doubt and anger, but perhaps it was worth exploring. I knew that words alone would not mend the wounds we had inflicted on each other over the years, but it was a start, a fragile step toward healing. As I stood there, the weight of the world pressing down on my chest, I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. The revelation about Zaria's betrayal shattered any lingering hope I had for reconciliation. She hadn't just borrowed my dress. She had conspired with someone else to ruin my day. The thought of it made bile rise in my throat. How could she have done this? I had always known there was an undercurrent of jealousy in our relationship, but this was a new low. I could almost hear the whispers of family members as they began to piece together the puzzle, their eyes flickering between me and Zaria, the tension mounting like a storm cloud ready to burst. My heart raced as I approached her, the crowd around us fading into a blur. The laughter and music that had once filled the air now felt like a cacophony, drowning out my thoughts. Zaria stood there, still in my wedding dress, her smile faltering as she caught sight of my expression. I could feel the fire in my gut, fueled by betrayal and anger. The very fabric of our sisterhood, once a bond one cherished, now felt frayed and torn. I called her name, but the sound barely escaped my lips, choked by the weight of what I had to say. I could see her eyes darting around the room, searching for support, but there was none to be found. The family members who had once adored her were now standing behind me, their loyalty shifting like sand. I took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage I had left. It was now or never. "Why, Zaria?" I finally managed to ask, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Why would you do this to me?" I searched her eyes for an answer, but they were filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. The truth of her actions hung in the air like a thick fog, and I knew I deserved clarity. She hesitated, her bravado wavering. The facade of innocence she had maintained crumbled as the reality of her jealousy took center stage. I could see it, her own insecurities, her need for validation, and the desperate attempt to steal my moment, convinced that it would somehow elevate her own. The crowd was silent, every ear attuned to our confrontation, every heart beating in sync with the rising tension. As I pressed on, the family began to rally around me, a protective wall forming against Zaria. "You don't understand how much this day meant to me," I said, my voice breaking slightly as I fought back tears. This dress was not just fabric. It was a symbol of my love, my journey, and my dreams. You took that from me. I could see the weight of my words sink in, the realization of her actions dawning upon her like the first light of dawn breaking through a dark night. Zaria's expression shifted, from defiance to regret. The tears that welled in her eyes were not of remorse but of fear at being exposed. The very thing she had sought to diminish, my happiness, had now become the source of her isolation. As I looked around, I saw my family members exchanging glances, their support for me evident in the tightening of their jaws and the way they stood a little taller beside me. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the sound of Zaria's shallow breaths as she grappled with the reality of her actions. In that moment, I felt a surge of strength. I had spent too long allowing her jealousy to overshadow my own life, my own happiness. I was done being a victim of our rivalry. I took a step back, letting the distance between us grow, the space filled with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. Zaria, now visibly shaken, stood alone in the spotlight that had once been mine, surrounded by the very family she had hoped to win over through deceit. As I turned away, preparing to embrace the support of my loved ones, I felt a newfound sense of freedom. This moment was not just about my wedding. It was about breaking free from the chains of jealousy and betrayal that had bound us for so long. I would not allow Zaria's actions to define me or our relationship any longer. I was ready to walk down the aisle with Jordan, my true love, unburdened by the weight of Zaria's choices. With a deep breath, I steadied my resolve. I would not let this moment taint my joy. I would embrace my happiness, knowing that while my relationship with Zaria had shifted irrevocably, my future was bright and filled with the promise of love. As I stepped forward, ready to reclaim my day, I carried with me the hope that one day, healing could come. But for now, I was ready to leave the past behind.